Hi everyone, I'm Jeremy Reeves, head blender of Cornell and Diehl Pipe Tobacco Company, and thanks for joining us again for another episode of Cornell and Diehl's Tobacco Selections. Today we're going to be talking about a really unique and special leaf. It is dark-fired tobacco, specifically from the Italian growing region of Sansepolcro. So Sansepolcro is a region of Italy that has a long history of producing dark-fired tobacco, specifically for use in Italian-style dark-fired, dry-cured cigars like Perottis and Toscanos, those kinds of things. So they use the dark-fired to make the entire cigar, wrapper and filler. There's no binder in those. But wrapper and filler are all Sansepolcro area dark-fired. And when you make a machine-made cigar, it's pre-cut on both ends. So you've got a flat end that is the foot where you light, and a slightly domed head that is also pre-cut. So the way we found out about this, this tobacco, was actually Sykes was on a trip to Italy, and he learned about this very famous area that produced a particularly storied strain of dark-fired, and he went there to check it out. And through the course of talking with one of the manufacturers that dealt with a bunch of farmers in that area, he learned that while they predominantly used this leaf for cigars, that occasionally in some of the shops, they would get guys coming in looking for pipe tobacco, and all they had was these cigars, but they would buy the cut ends from the cigar manufacturers, and they call them florets. They're just little cones or domes of tobacco. They look like little flowers, and so the shop owners would buy those from the manufacturers and sell those as a pipe tobacco form of this product. It is basically just a byproduct of the cigar manufacturing. So when Sykes heard this story, he was like, that is so interesting that we almost undoubtedly are going to do something with it. We just have to figure out what. So he brought back a little box of these florets to me. It's, like I say, these little cones and domes of tobacco all rolled up. And he was like, what can we do with this? So I smoked some, and they were delicious. And so we figured out a way to process the florets so that we could cut them basically into little coins that would just unravel into ribbon, and made a blend with it. This year, we've been able to secure more of this leaf, but not in the floret form, just in leaf that has been stripped. So we're actually working with the strips that they would be using to produce the filler of these cigars. We did not get the big wrapper versions, but it is all the same kind of tobacco. So the dark-fired that they are producing there is specifically for cigars, but they used a byproduct for pipe tobacco, the cut-ins, and that was the inspiration for Sansepolcro. It was the first time that we used that tobacco. But another tobacco blend that we decided really should have some Italian leaf in it, Savinelli had asked us to make a blend to commemorate their 140th anniversary. This was in 2016. So we used some of that tobacco along with some Oriental and some Virginia and a really interesting casing, honey and some vodka, and a really delicate topping, orange oil and orange liqueur and lavender oil, and created something that I think has just a beautiful bouquet. And the way that the Italian leaf plays with those sweeter and more floral flavors is really unique. It gives a little bolstered depth and some earthiness and it introduces some spicy qualities to that blend. In Sansepolcro, we took this leaf, and once we had processed it into ribbon, we pressed it with some red Virginia, a little bit of bright Virginia, and a very, 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 very small. I can't actually stress how small, because it's so small that lots of people pick through it and can't find the evidence of it anywhere, but it's there, I promise. Just a little bit of black Cavendish. And the black Cavendish is really just there to add a little bit of volume to the smoke, add a little bit of depth to the way that those other flavors, the Virginia and the dark fired, play across your palate. So most of us are familiar, or more familiar at least, with dark-fired Kentucky, and we think of it as coming from Kentucky or maybe from Tennessee. But what you may not be aware of is that there's actually dark-fired that's produced in Africa and in parts of India and in Italy, as we're talking about now. So dark-fired can come from a few other places, but they still consider it Kentucky. The reason is because Kentucky is where that fire curing process, that hardwood fire curing process, was really invented. And so when you find tobacco that is being processed this way in other countries, they still consider their product to be Kentucky fire cured. It's just Kentucky fire cured Italian leaf, or Kentucky fire cured Malawi leaf, or whatever the country of origin may be. The unique qualities of this Sansepolcro tobacco compared to truly grown in Kentucky, dark-fired Kentucky, are that I find this to have a little more pronounced sweetness. There are some chocolatier notes that I don't really find in Kentucky-grown dark-fired. Kentucky dark-fired has that real meaty, deep, earthy, dense flavor, and it has a really, really high level of smoke. This has a more toned down level of smoke, and it doesn't remind me of barbecue when I smell it so much as it reminds me of a lightly smoked beverage almost. It reminds me of wine, it reminds me of clove, but just a hint of smokiness to it. It doesn't have those deep barbecue kind of notes and meaty notes that Kentucky fire cured has. But the delicacy that it brings to this and the heightened sweetness that it brings to this leaf are really, really pleasant and unique. And when I first tasted it, when Sykes brought back those florets, I knew I had to do something with it, with Virginia. And so you can see in the 140th anniversary and in Sansepolcro recipe that I've described that Virginia was really where I wanted to put this side by side with, is really what I wanted to pair it with to sort of showcase some of the interesting complexity that this leaf can offer. The sweetness is really palpable, and it's quite pleasant. You do get a hint of smokiness in the background. Through the nose, it is a bit spicy. You can hear it in my voice, just a little bit of a catch. It's definitely stout, although I would say it's not as stout as Kentucky that we use that is actually from Kentucky. The nicotine depth is less in this. And just that flavor that reminds me so much of cloves and red wine. Think spiced mulled wine. It's delightful. It's wonderful. So look for Savinelli 140th anniversary. Look for Sansepolcro. We just got this leaf and started using it, and those are things that you will see coming here in the next little bit. I hope this has been informative and helpful, and I look forward to seeing you guys next time.